Hey gang, welcome to a rainy, dark afternoon in Seattle. Kind of chilly too.
It is the dark months.
We have a project here from 2016, a little something from Fallout. One of my favorite objects. It's my Mr. Handy model.
It's the kind of thing you see right in the beginning of the game. There he is.
Yeah, right in the beginning of Fallout 4, you have a Mr. Handy, or one of the versions in your house.
Yeah,
Codsworth.
Like he's taller than a human.
Yeah, he's a big boy.
But in the game, you can get little statues of different characters. And we got a little Mr. Handy model in the game, and Bill was like, I need that.
Yes. So this isn't Mr. Handy. This is the model of Mr. Handy from the game that you can actually get and put on your shelf. That's exactly what I wanted to make. This is the same one. He's largely survived. A while back here on our Extra Credit channel, we did a video where I fixed his eyeballs. They were drifting a little bit.
Yeah, the resin was so thin, it was actually starting to bend.
Yeah, so that's been fixed. He's looking pretty good. He lost his thin little pincer. Broke off at some point. Mm-hmm. But other than that, man, he's doing great. He's got his cool little eyeballs. So why don't we dive in and see how we made it? Are you ready?
I am ready because I don't remember.
Yeah, me neither.
All right.
This is the creepy shed behind our house. Nuka-Cola bottle we made.
Very good.
Oh, I like the music.
All right.
It's
what
fun.
else we have over
This is definitely the kind of shed you'd be looting in Fallout.
Adhesives, yes. Fantastic. Jackpot. It's got to be something else over here, though.
Looking back there right now, too, and it looks pretty much the same.
Oh,
Way to take the label off a can for that.
Like a can of
what
soup
else
or
do we
something.
have here? Oh, my goodness. I can't even believe it. It's a Mr. Handy robot. Ah. Over encumbered.
Happens to the best of us.
That's good.
Actually, so the last time I played Skyrim, which is similar to Fallout, made by the same company, similar. The inventory thing is a problem with both those games. Last time I played Skyrim, I put a mod. I got a mod that the vendors would have a lot more money, and then I could carry a lot more stuff. I just got a mod to do that so that I would never be over encumbered, and I would have plenty of stuff to sell, and the vendors would have plenty of money to buy.
You could hold all those dragon bones.
Yes, tons of dragon bones.
Look at that hoodie.
I still have it. It's downstairs.
This was probably right around the time where you stopped wearing it.
Right.
Because the sleeves look like they're solid, crunchy sleeves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Greetings, fellow makers. Welcome down to the shop. I'm Bill Duran, and today I'm going to show you how I made this
I'm all points.
Mr. Handy scale.
This is before you made the
model.
base for it.
Now, I don't know about
you're
you
right.
guys, but
Yeah.
I've been playing a lot of Fallout 4 lately, and when I found the little model-sized Mr. Handy out in the wasteland, I was absolutely tickled, and I had to have one for myself. So I set about making one. Now,
Like
this guy
it's
here
literally
actually,
how it worked. Like I was looting a house. There's a Mr. Handy model on the shelf. I picked it up and I looked at it and I thought, well, I have to have one. That's the perfect through line. And then a week later, I just started working on it.
scaled down version of the full-size Mr. Handy, which is slightly different.
Yeah, it is a little different.
Yeah, I'm sure they had to make changes for the in-game polygon count kind of thing.
But I made mine look like the full-scale one just because I like the look of that one better.
Than the little model version that you find in the game, but I like this one better.
Yeah, there you
to
go.
get started, I loaded up Fallout 4 on my PlayStation 4, and I took a whole bunch of screenshots
You're
and
just following around with the wall.
to use as a reference
Here's
for
your
this guide
baby.
for doing my 3D
Look,
modeling. I decided
I have a
to
tiny
use
you.
this as an excuse to learn the basics of Fusion 360.
Oh, yeah.
And I also want to thank Colin over
What a project to start.
Bit of a project to dive into, huh?
Yeah, this is when Colin was like, hey, you guys should use Fusion.
Yeah, Colin works for Autodesk, and he gave me a rundown on getting into it.
Autodesk for giving me a crash course in the software. It's really great. If you're a hobbyist or a student or a startup company like me, then you can grab a copy for free. You have no excuse not to. It's really awesome. And
oh, look at that shell. I love the shell command.
Started. All of my Mr. Handy parts were modeled in Fusion 360 separately so that I could 3D print them and so that I could make molds of them.
Before using Fusion, we were using 123D Design. also made by Autodesk. That's what I made my Ray Blaster models in.
Yes.
Yeah.
Everything but I think the grips. You might have used Maya for that because it was
That's
such
right.
a weird
That
shape.
is right. But the thing is, like, they don't. 123D design doesn't exist anymore. I wish it did, because it was a much less intimidating step than jumping straight into Fusion.
I'm curious what Tinkercad is like now, because that
Right.
used to be their even simpler one. So maybe that's more robust now.
Yep.
That one's more for like taking a bunch of primitives and sticking them together. But
You can still make some really cool stuff.
Yeah.
All I'm saying is I liked Fusion, or I love Fusion, but I also liked 123D design a lot. But this was the first thing I did in
This
Fusion.
was a pretty painstaking process with lots of little.
I'm just proud of having named all of those sketches.
Good job,
Look at that.
Bill.
I don't always do that.
Bits. And I left some of the parts out because I knew they wouldn't 3D print very well. For example, the nameplate on the back.
That looks so good.
Yeah.
And instead of trying
I love that
to
font,
print
too.
those, I actually carved them into the printed piece using my
As
laser
a test.
cutter. I wasn't sure how this would work, so I did a test really fast on a scrap printed piece, and it worked great.
Nice.
So I put the back plate into the laser and etched in the Mr. Handy text. I also used the laser.
The 3D printer for that was the Dremel, and that was all PLA as well.
Yes, the Dremel Idea Builder, our first 3D printer.
Yeah. It did a great job. The laser cutter, so the thing I was etching had a slight curve to it. Now the depth of the laser matters. So how far away the material is from the laser matters. So if your thing is too curved, it'll look good on one spot, but where it gets lower, it won't be as crisp.
Oh, and then it'll just stop working.
And then eventually it just won't be cutting anymore. So that's something to consider if you're doing that kind of operation in Fusion or with a laser. People are saying we could laser etch the Alvin on the pommel of the Sword of the King, which might work, but it is kind of slanted.
Yeah.
So it might not work.
I bet I could create inserts. So there's it's like a diamond triangle. I don't even remember, but there's like two and then a curved bottom one.
Yeah.
So maybe I could have like recesses with panels that are flat, and we laser cut them, and then I kind of like press them in there.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I did with his back piece here.
Okay.
To cut out the iris part.
Oh, you even did the
eyeball.
iris.
Look at that.
This was done with some styrene plastic.
Oh, look at that.
Once it was cut out, could then be glued into the 3D printed piece. The rest of the parts were just printed out
Just
on
PLA.
my Dremel
Look at it go.
printer in a PLA plastic, and I was actually really impressed with the quality that it spit out. Of course, I still had to do a lot of cleanup work. All of these
You
parts
did a lot of
needed
this on the
to
live
up
stream.
to get rid of
Yeah, a lot of that sanding.
printed look. I've been doing this for a few months now, and I've come up with a pretty good process. What I like to do is to first sand everything down with a 220 grit sandpaper. If I can get rid of as much of that 3D print texture as possible on this step, then I do so. Then
Filler
everything
primer.
gets hit with a
That Dupli-Color filler primer
This
is
will
really
fill
nice.
in
Oh, it's
for-
the good stuff.
It doesn't stink as much.
and then
Yeah.
I can go back.
Dries really
in with
fast,
more
too.
Sandpaper, usually a higher grit, maybe a 400, and sand the surface down almost all the way to the plastic again, so that I can see any of the areas that.
It's a good
little
footage
bit
there.
Yeah, right?
rough. Once that's all set, I hit everything again with a little more just normal primer. And then it's
nice,
all
just
got
showing this
wet
on one
sanded down
piece,
to the surface
and then
that
every other piece I
wanted
did off
for
camera.
molding. You could, of course, just paint it at this point, but I wanted to make some molds so that I could make a couple of copies and so that I wouldn't have to print 3 eyes and 3 legs.
Look at the duplicates. So just one mold for that. One
For
mold
the whole chain too. The eye, the lens, the stalk that it's on, and this bib. All 4 of those pieces I could cast 3 copies to get those.
And the leg up until here, right?
I think that just this part is separate.
Oh, wow.
Just the tools
Yeah.
are separate. So the whole
great.
leg up to there is, so all 3 of those came out of the same mold.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Most of these parts were molded using a
Oh, that's footage. This must be when we got the
molding process where
GoPro.
I would clay up
I wonder if
half
that
of
was from the
mold,
live stream?
pour a bunch of
Maybe.
silicone
Yeah.
on top of it, and then when that cures,
Looked
I
like
can flip it
webcam
over,
or
remove the clay,
GoPro
and
footage.
pour in the other half of the
The
silicone.
little molds.
This does take a while, but it makes some really, really nice molds. If you'd like to get a crash course on some more mold making, we've got a whole
We
video
do!
series. We'll have a link to
If you
that
haven't
down
seen
in
it,
the
check
description.
it out.
Now, the lenses that go in the eyeballs were a little bit different. I sanded down the 3D printed pieces, but then I brushed on an epoxy on top of the
That's right.
lens so that when it cured, I'd have a nice, smooth
Right.
surface. These were molded just like the rest of the parts, but when I cast them, I used Smooth Cast 325, which cures pretty clear, and I put them in a pressure pot.
I
This
remember
would
the different resins that are clear, but not like crystal clear. So like the more safer to work with resins like 325, they'll either be tinted a teeny bit yellow or a teeny bit blue. And the Smooth Cast 325 is a little bit yellow. And that's great for this project.
Yeah, he
like,
looks old.
Yeah, just a teeny bit of a warmer color to
Yeah.
it.
I love these lenses though. I don't know if you could tell. Here, I wanna. They're thick and they distort the light so much. If you look at his eyeballs,
So
especially
good.
if you look at it from the side. I don't know. I just think that's cool.
I think it's awesome.
I think it looks really, really.
It's just something we don't get to do very much.
Yeah.
sure that any bubbles that are remaining would be compressed down.
We don't
to
even
a
have that
microscopic
pressure
size.
pot anymore. We gave it
Once
to
was
Eric.
all cured, I could pop out the lenses and
So that he can
look
deal with that.
nice
We got a
and
much nicer one.
just the way lenses should look. The rest of the robot parts were cast with Smooth Cast 300. This is a urethane.
Yeah, you hardly
resin.
show the molds at
I put a
all.
little
Yeah,
bit of
right.
tint in there to make them gray. Once they popped out of the molds, they needed a tiny bit of cleanup because it was a two-part mold. There's a seam that needs to get sanded down. I also had to cut off some of the sprues from the
As a
pouring
bold
process and
drill
drill
hole.
some
Yeah,
holes
right.
for the
It works.
Wiggling.
little arms could get all those adorable little accessories.
Yeah, in fact, I could cast
Then I
another
glued all of these little pieces
pincer
to
and
stand
replace that. Maybe I'll do that
process.
in a
I started
vlog or
by
something.
base coating everything with a black spray paint. This is a Krylon Fusion that's meant for plastic. Then I went over everything using a crappy airbrush with low air pressure.
Oh, this
on
is fun.
surface to sort of sputter a bunch of silver paint all over the surface.
Yeah, so if you have an airbrush, try this. Do it just on a piece of cardboard or whatever. The sputtering, splattery look you can get is really cool and super effective for like specific stuff. Just turn the air pressure like way, way down, like as low as it'll go, and so that only just the little few spurts of paint. Like tinker with it a little bit, see what you can do.
Not getting full coverage. I did the same thing again with a darker paint. This was a gunmetal, and that left a really cool textured
Yeah,
metallic
I
surface
like
on
that.
all
Like a
of the
good small
robot
scale
parts.
Mhm.
A bunch
version.
of the other details were done by hand. For example, the pupil was black, so I just used some black acrylic paint in there. The iris was more of a silver, so I went over that. Some
Really
of the
good,
trim
depth of
parts
field on
were
these shots.
Yeah.
done using a darker metallic.
This would
paint.
have been filmed with our
The
50 millimeter.
flamethrower got some yellow and
1.4.
some red, and then
But you
a bunch of
film
the
these all
body
yourself.
panels
Like they're all nice and focused
Ooh,
and
yeah.
crisp and everything. Good job.
were covered with a lighter silver paint. I let all of this dry.
I'm not using paint.
Oh yeah. Bill forgot to get
I
footage.
did a ton of work without filming it, so right here I'm brushing water on it.
I've done a version of that before
Yeah.
with a was it a epoxy fiberglass layup
Yep.
at some point. I was like, it's totally
Yeah.
wet.
In this shot, I'm
Yeah.
just
I
brushing
overnight
water
to
on
make
it.
hard to
sure it
remember to
was
do all
all
this by
set
yourself.
Before I did my
Like-
weathering, and the weathering was the really fun part. I started with a wash of a dirty green. I wanted it to look like it was kind of mildewy, like he's been sitting around for a couple.
Lots of
hundred
greens
years.
and yellows.
Yeah.
I covered everything in this green, watered down acrylic paint, and then I blotted off a bunch of it using a paper towel. Then I went back over it using a sponge, removing even more in sort of a haphazard pattern. If I found there was still too much paint, I'd wet it down a little bit and then use that sponge to take even more of it off, scrape a little bit off of it until I was satisfied.
That was
with the
great.
finish. Once that
Mhm.
layer was dry, I went back over it again, this time with more of a rusty wash. And I was a little more selective this time, using a sponge again to
This is so
apply
much fun.
the paint in just a couple areas that I wanted. And then again, blotting it a bit with paper towels and sponges until I was happy with the finish. Once the surface
This is
was all
like
dry,
this. You're trying to get it to a point where it looks random, right? But it doesn't look like you made it random.
Yeah.
Right. That's kind of the
Yeah.
like the goal with that kind of weathering.
And like just having the one streak down the side you can see on the left side of the shot there is really nice. And having the buildup around the crevices.
Yeah.
It's not even.
You just don't want it to look intentional.
Yeah.
I needed to make sure that the crevices looked all greasy and dirty because this guy's been sitting around in the wasteland for a long time. So I reached for my favorite oil paints. These are water mixable oil paints. And I used a black and a brown and then just started smearing it in all of the crevices using...
That is up close.
Yeah.
I might have been using those macro filters I had for that 50 millimeter to get that tight. If you haven't used oil paints, or the water mixable oil paints are cool because you can thin them with water, which is really easy. If you haven't tried those, next time you're at the art store or craft store, just grab a tube of black and brown, maybe a burnt sienna, maybe a rust, or a raw sienna. Just grab them and just give it a go. Just practice using it to weather something, some little tchotchke or whatever. I just want you to experience that.
Yeah.
Because the way it smears and feels is very different than acrylic paint.
Yeah, if you were like gonna repaint a Nerf gun to look all old and beat up, like metallic stuff looks really good with it. It may strip the finish or that you have on the prop already, depending on if it's a lacquer or not. So make sure to do tests.
Yep, do some tests.
And it does look a little different when it dries as well.
But it's worth experimenting with. I just have tons of fun with it.
These are great. They're kind of greasy like you would find on a robot. Once I got it on all the crevices, I could just use a paper towel to wipe most of it away until everything looked sufficiently dirty. I also went back in with more of these paints to add some
I'm just really impressed with the footage you got.
Yeah, right?
I wonder if you had a monitor?
Once that was done, I could take those nice lenses that I made and pop them in their sockets. Once they are in there, I could go around the edges a little bit and weather them. Finally, I got my airbrush with some flat black acrylic paint and added a little bit of char.
That's another trick that I really love is the flat black paint. I just use Tamiya has a flat black paint. I use my airbrush. Anything you want to look scorched and charred, the flat paint makes it look like it's got carbon on it. It's not shiny. It really sells it. I dig it.
Exhaust port on his jet. With the painting all done, I could assemble our little fella. This went by really, really fast. All I had to do was super glue all of the parts together. This was extremely satisfying. Really fun to see him come together right at the end.
It's so much fun putting together a model kit that you made yourself.
Yeah.
And at this point, just gluing the pieces together and they all slip together and fit. So satisfying.
It's probably what got you hooked on Fusion as well, Fusion 360.
Yeah,
look at that. So this is out in front of the creepy shed, and we have a stool that swivels. And there was a time where we would take every project out to the shed that could fit on the stool, and because it's a great rotator. If you don't have a stool that rotates, if you have a little lazy Susan used for painting, that would work as well. But we would just rotate the whole stool.
Yeah. So someone is just out of frame with their hand going, ee!
Yeah.
Little Mr.
But it works so well for this model,
ready
too.
To go, ready to find his way through the wasteland. This was an extremely satisfying build. I don't know what it is about tiny robots, but I am in love with making little pieces, little robots, and this guy was a perfect project to test out some of those skills. Thank you guys so much for watching this build video. This was a lot of fun. I love this guy. I made him printed him a little top hat. It's going to be really adorable. I'll have to finish that up for him. We have
I don't think I ever did that.
Other Fallout videos ready for your hungry eyeballs right there if you want to dive into those. We also have the mold making video series. We also have a 3D printing video series, all linked down below and definitely worth checking out. You guys are awesome for checking out the video and for supporting us, especially our patrons over on Patreon.
You guys are cool. Continue to be cool.
Over there if you want to help us make these videos.
There's something at the end.
Oh yeah, that's right.
More of a two-way street. And before you ask, no, I won't be selling any kits of this guy. Sorry to say, but you should totally try and make one yourself. Also, I will be hanging on to the 3D files. If you want one, you got to go model it yourself. Fortunately, we have a bunch of videos for you, some tutorials to help you.
Or wait a couple years.
Yeah, eventually I'll put out a course.
Well, that too, but Bethesda came out with their own.
That's right. Yeah, you can just buy one of these now.
Yeah, there's one of their awesome 3D modelers. I remember he did a Protectron.
Was that Dennis?
It could have been Dennis.
Yeah,
I think so. And then
he made most of the robots for Fallout 4.
Yeah, and then they did versions for mass production.
Right, yeah.
So they come out with different paint schemes of this guy. So they have like a Mr. Gutsy, like the more military one, I think. But they're available now, so you can just buy them. Oh, there's too many categories.
Figures, maybe figurines.
Yes.
There we go. Mr. Handy articulated. Oh my.
Whoa.
That's pretty cool looking.
Do the irises open?
I don't know.
Oh, so they didn't. Was it debossed their Mr. Handy symbol?
Yeah.
They didn't
Emboss.
cut it and emboss it. Yeah.
Looks pretty good though.
Oh yeah, it looks great.
Look
Look
at
at, oh man,
Little hose on there.
that's beautiful.
That's nice.
Wonder what he's made
Still
of.
available, $150.
That's not bad. I like ours though.
I love ours.
Thank you
It's
again
special.
for watching, and we'll see you guys all next week.
Hmm? Oh, yeah.
So that's as fast as you can walk when you're over encumbered.
This is gonna look so sweet next to my bobbleheads. In a couple days.
Couldn't possibly drop the tape or anything. You know, you have to take it all.
That was fun. Thanks for hanging out with us, you guys. Thanks for supporting us. We love it. Can't do it without you. Please keep that up. And we'll see you next week with some more shenanigans. See you, gang. Bye.